Hello and welcome back to Book Talk with Kara. Today I am delighted to introduce you to my friend and debut author, Kit Tosello. And it is so much fun. I love when I have the opportunity to welcome debut authors to the show because there's nothing quite as special as that very first novel. And for Kit, that novel is get started talking all about it. Do you want to tell us just a little bit about yourself, Kit?
Yeah, about me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I live in a small town in Central Oregon, right kind of in the middle of the state, which is an inspiration. I drew inspiration from that for the novel of for The Color of Home and the fictional town of Charity Falls. We moved here from Central California, the central coast of California 20 years ago. And I am a former kitchen designer, have three kids. We're also small business owners. We have a tea shop in our little tourist town. And yeah, we've had a number of businesses over the years, including a coffee house, a natural food store, video store, frozen yogurt. So here we are 9 years into the tea shop. And yeah, so I love and reading and hiking and my husband and my two grandkids.
Oh, that's so fun. And I love the fact that it sounds like you're a serial entrepreneur. So being a novelist is going to be right in line with that.
It's
And
another
you're also,
business.
yeah, and you're going to love that I'm drinking British breakfast tea right now. So what are you drinking?
I am drinking matcha. I made a matcha latte and I add a little bit of mint extract, usually every morning.
Ooh. Oh, I bet that tastes really refreshing with that little bit of mint
I
added
love
to
it.
it.
Yeah, it's kind of wakeful.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. So writing your debut novel, there's something, everything's new, it's fresh, and it's exciting because it's the first time. So what was it like
Yeah.
getting the call? We call it the call when you found out that your book was being bought. What was that experience like?
Oh, I don't think there's much to compare it to. It was pretty it's just a different kind of excitement, you know. It's almost like I had this excitement and this peace at the same time. That's kind of hard to describe. Yeah, I'll never forget when my agent Cynthia called and she was so excited for me to get my first yes, because I started out 15 years ago when I got serious about writing. I was writing nonfiction, and so we had worked together over the for a couple of years with some book proposals and ideas for nonfiction. And then yeah, it was kind of a surprise to her when I presented her with a piece of fiction and said, "What do you think of this?"
Oh, that's so fun. And it sounds like, based on what you were telling us just a minute ago about kind of your background and your history, that you pulled on a lot of that for as you were writing The Color of Home, because the heroine is a former interior designer, or she is an interior designer from California who now finds herself in this smaller town. So how did you get like the idea for the story?
Yeah, you know, that was kind of the basic of writing my first novel and thinking, write what you know. There, I knew I could draw on those things and that would be a comfort zone. But I didn't realize until almost looking back on it, how many things I had drawn on from my own life. You know how that is sometimes because you're caught up in writing the story, and it's kind of surprising to look back. One of the key things is that Audrey, the main character in The Color of Home, she has lost her father as she was just about to turn 16 and it was very sudden, a tragic fire. And I lost my dad when I was 17, from lung cancer. So that was another commonality. I could work from that place um, of of rooted, pain that you carry with you and how you cope, and maybe not always cope in the best ways. Um, and
Yeah.
and then another thing, this makes the book sound really sad, and it's not a sad book, but my husband, this little town where we live right now, um, his mother died when he was 18 in a car crash in this town. And for many years, when I met him, a couple decades later, well, no, it wasn't that long. I'd be a lot older than I am. um, he, it was it was a he wanted to bring me to this town because he had family here. But it was a place with a lot of hard memories. So
Mm.
that too is incorporated into the book, an understanding that, um, that is an emotional challenge to get past sometimes when a place represents something hurtful.
Yeah, and it's so real that, and sometimes we don't even recognize how much a place can be tied up with emotions, and we kind of carry it, but don't recognize that we're carrying it.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I love about stories and novels is that they help us to see sometimes what we can't see when it's like nonfiction. So when you think about this book, what is it that you hope that readers will kind of walk away from when they get to the end and they close the book? What is that experience or that thing that you want them to take away from The Color of Home?
Yeah. Well, that what I just described is really where the story begins. And from there, it's really a redemptive. So they will, readers, I'm sure, will come away with a sense of hopefulness, no matter what their circumstances are. But I think ultimately, one of the things Audrey, her dream was to be an interior designer, and she had this, carefully curated life, and then it just wasn't working for her anymore. And I think one of the questions that is good to ask ourselves once in a because one of the themes of the book is really home and places of belonging. And so the question, I think, is healthy to ask ourselves: am I where I'm supposed to be in this season of life, or am I playing it safe because I wake up today and I do the same thing I did yesterday? Is there any trust involved
Mhm.
in my life right now? Is there something that a new dream, or so that's
Yeah.
one of the things. And
Oh, I love
then
that.
Daisy, yeah. So it's a lot too about her relationship with her great aunt, which is her grandmother figure. And the reason that she comes to this small town in the first place is to help her great aunt um, get the house can move into assisted living. So Aunt Daisy is in her 70s, mid 70s, and she's dealing with giving up her sense of home and place and rootedness. And it's for her, it's about letting go. Um, so I think it's good to ask. Another thing that's probably good to ask ourselves that came up for me a lot is, um, am I making my home in the right things? Or
Mm.
am I looking at home through an eternal lens? And I think that's valuable to evaluate once in a while.
I love those questions. And they're deep. I mean, they're really rich. They're kind of hard to wrestle with, but they're so important.
Yeah.
Am I where I belong in this season? And we're actually dealing with something related to that with our 16-year-old right now, where a place that's been her safe place and a place that's brought her a lot of joy in the last week and a half has suddenly pivoted really hard. But it's
Mm,
hard to walk away from that. And it's hard to imagine for her a different place. And so trying to coach her through that because we're like, well, this is probably the first of many times that she's going to have some experience something like this. But
exactly.
but she's also old enough that she needs to start making those decisions on her own
Ooh,
versus
yeah,
us being like,
that's
no, you are leaving because we want to leave because this is awful. But then also, am I making my home in the right things? What a great question. As folks in this country, we tend to surround ourselves with things and then put our value and our worth in that.
right.
So, wow, you're just wrestling with all the easy questions there, friend. My
Yeah, well,
goodness.
I started out, like I say, with nonfiction and writing a lot of inspirational blogs. So it's hard for me not to. And again, a lot of this is these are concepts that I saw myself when I finished writing, um,
Yeah. And
more
isn't
so
that
than
part of
as I wrote.
it's part of the fun discovery process, I think, as we go back after we've written it sometimes to see, oh,
Yeah,
that's in there.
yeah,
I didn't realize that was going to be in there when I started.
it's so fun. And it's really, yeah, it's really, I think, divine. It's a divine process in a way.
Oh, absolutely. And to me, that's some of the most fun that happens is when I'm going back and I'm like, oh God, I didn't realize you put that in there. And it's so clearly there. Now, do we make it more or do we leave it at the level it's at? Is that the theme? And so that's part of the fun discovery process for me in the writing. Uh,
Yeah, I'm
so
hooked.
yeah, it's fun. So is this a standalone or is it going to be part of a series?
It is a standalone. I'm writing a second book right now that's also set in Charity Falls. It has some crossover cameo appearances of characters. But both of them should be standalone novels. So I can't say a whole lot about that one yet, but I'm dying to talk about it. So
Oh, that's fun. And it's always fun when you can come back to characters, but when it stands alone, that also makes it just so much fun. And for readers, it's
yeah.
great. So when you think about like the process, and you just said you've been writing for a number of years, if you could go back, is there anything you would change about the process to get here to the, your first book is getting ready to release? Is there anything about the process that you're like, man, I really wish I'd known this so that I could have changed it? Or do you think the process was just what it needed to be?
I do think it's what it needed to be. Now, I wouldn't have accepted that very well probably 15 years ago, thinking, oh, it's going to take me that long to get published. But I can see that I really think God just uses our dreams as a vehicle for shaping us. And I mean, I think that pursuing dreams is really, really important. But ultimately, um, what I learned in the process, I'm a different person than I would have been if I hadn't gone through the process and the challenges and the ups and downs and the community that built during this time, which is so precious to me. Um, but I do think God cares, more about who we're becoming
Yeah.
than what we accomplish, and yet He loves our dreams and He inspires them. So it's interesting.
Yeah. It is a fascinating way to think about it because, we often get so focused on the who we are and what we want to do, or we focus on what we want to do and he focuses on the who we are, I guess would be a good way to phrase it. So when you think
Yeah.
about, the process, when did you first know that, hey, I want to be a writer?
I think I always have been. I mean, I just love books from the beginning. My mom at one point was just a part-time. She drove a bookmobile.
Oh, how
So, and
fun.
anyway, my dad's a teacher, so reading was a big thing for us, and it was magical to me. I wrote a lot in high school. I knew that was kind of my thing. Honestly, I took creative writing classes in my early 20s, wrote a couple short stories that, yeah. But when I got married and we started having businesses and babies, and I would work sometimes outside the home in various seasons. I just had a full plate, and I
Mhm.
honestly, it's not that I didn't think about it. I just think my creativity went into other things as a mom,
Yeah.
and so it was interesting. It really the reason yeah, what shifted was the economic downturn and losing my position as a kitchen designer after we'd had this big building boom. And I had, at that time, my oldest had gone off to college and my second child was about to. And my youngest was like 10. And she said to me, Mom, that's great. Great, you lost your job. Now you can write your book. So I had kind of confided to her in the read aloud, times of, when I would read to her at night. So somehow, she definitely caught on that this was a dream for me,
Oh, that's so
um,
sweet.
and encouraged that. So I started blogging, and it kind of went from there. I started writing for the local paper and um, submitting articles and so forth.
Oh, I love that. And that's so, how sweet is it that it was your 10-year-old who was like, hey, this is your chance. This is your time to start pursuing that. So
It's true.
sweet.
And all the kids have been encouraging. And I think that there was something about being in this empty nest season, especially that weighed on me is like, I need to show my kids that, you know, what it looks like, like I'm still out here, I'm not waiting for them to come home, although I
Yeah.
am.
Yeah,
but I've got, God's working in my life and leading me to new things. And I think that that's important to show them. And so that's been a inspiration to me too.
that's awesome. Yeah, your life doesn't end when your kids move on to their next thing. You just get another chapter in your life too, which
Right.
is fantastic. So when you're writing, when do you write? Do you write in the morning? Do you write all day? What's your schedule or rhythm look like?
Yeah, I also work as a freelance book editor for nonfiction. So it's and then the tea shop. I'm doing a lot. I have a lot of roles in there. So I have a few plates to juggle and spin, whatever, and they get out of control sometimes. But I love to write during my best time of day, which is in the morning. And then sometimes I'm a power napper. And so sometimes my second best time is just in that first afternoon part of the afternoon. But I have to work these other things around it as well.
Yeah, very few of us get to just do it full time. Most of us have lots of other things going on. And do you tend to be a plotter or a pantser or somewhere in between?
You know what? I'm I'm somewhere in between, but I realize I'm starting to accept that I'm more of a pantser to a certain extent. I like to have a kind of a general idea of where I'm going, and I really mainly the big thing for me is knowing my characters. So I really can't get started until I've carried them with me for a while and listen to them converse in my head and know their stories. So when I have that in place, and a few other things, I'm learning that I'm actually more of an intuitive writer. I because I'm a student too, and so I'll try to I'll pick up another craft book and go, oh, there's something else, and then I'll go, wait, I did that. It just came instinctively to me
Mhm.
to do that at that time during the story, and so I'm trying to learn to trust that more and just have fun with it and not, keep double checking myself. But if that makes sense,
It does totally, because if you've been a lifelong reader, then you've picked up on a lot of what works and what doesn't just
that's it.
from reading. And so in those situations when we're starting to write, because I was very much the same way, I didn't know what RUE was and POV. I didn't have any idea what any of those acronyms were when I started writing.
Right.
But what I realized quickly is intuitively, I was a very good writer. And because of law school, I was a very technically fast and clean writer. And you put the two together and I can write a good book, but it's not going to be perfect pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But I have to know the characters, and I'm always pushing myself to do different, better, twisting things up. But learning to trust myself because I'm always like, I could do better.
Yeah.
There's someone else who's done more, won more awards, hit the list. I don't do that, da 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 da. And so then being able to go, but there's a lot I already do instinctively, and that's good. And so
Yeah.
just trusting
Yeah.
that. And so while
I have to
also,
be careful. Yeah, not overthinking
yeah,
and questioning myself. Yeah, I was. I also didn't do a whole lot of fiction reading when I was raising my kids and life was so busy. I didn't allow myself that privilege. Which, if I went back to change something, that's what I would probably do. Try to sneak in more fiction, um, because I do believe in the power of of story,
mhm,
and I'm not sure why I didn't. But when I started writing for the paper, I submitted an article um, to the editor there, and he took me on, and I was like, I had never had journalistic training, but I'd read the newspaper all my life, and so that encouraged that I made that connection that if I want to be a fiction writer, I better start reading a lot of books, and so that was probably my main teacher for the last 15 years was just reading stacks.
yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Kit, and congratulations on the release of The Color of Home. I hope you're enjoying and
Thank you.
savoring every moment.
I'm very excited. Yes, it's been a blast.